Thank you for staying with us and welcome back. We now cross live to Abuja, where the Chief Executive Officer of JP Morgan Chase, Jemmy Damone, is speaking at the ongoing Nigerian Economic Summit Group.
It's not your first time, so welcome to Abuja, which is the first stop on your tri-nation sub-Saharan African trip. I guess a good place to start will be on geopolitics. Reading, listening, or watching the news today could be very depressing. The Russian-Ukraine war, the deteriorating situation in the Middle East, the rising tension between China and Taiwan, and even just last week, you said, and I quote, recent events show that conditions are treacherous and are getting worse. So my first question is, how worried are you? And how should business leaders manage for situations like this?
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I am thrilled to be here in Nigeria and going to South Africa and Kenya later. We're opening our first branch in Kenya, which we're really happy to do as part of an expansion into Africa, which I think is very important. So we just had our earnings last week, and I did mention that the situation is kind of treacherous. If you look at history of the world, it's probably the most treacherous since World War II. You have a major land war with 1 million casualties in Europe, major armies battling each other. You have terrorism in the Middle East and terrorism around the world. You have Iran, North Korea fostering it. It's quite clear that they're orchestrating with Russia, both against Ukraine and against Israel. And then, of course, and that's a complex situation. And of course, you have America's relationship with China, which is extremely complex and made more complex because of these wars. And so, having said, and I think it's very important for America to have a strong, consistent foreign policy and to make sure that we navigate through this, which I hope we do. But as you know, wars often have different outcomes than people expect, and sometimes when they start, they can be lasting for 5, 6, or 7 years. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to worry about it. It doesn't stop JP Morgan from expanding. We want to serve clients and serve countries and be respected wherever we do business to help Nigerians in Nigeria and Nigerian companies here, and also Nigerian companies that they go overseas. So we still have expansion plans. So worrying about that doesn't stop us from doing things, but we just have to be very conscious of the risk it creates.
Right. Oh, thank you. But I also know it's not doom and gloom. So what reasons give you the most optimism right now, and what is JP Morgan's approach to risk management in these rather volatile times?
So, I love to look at history and read history. So if you look at the history of mankind, it's done pretty well. Over the last, even since the World War II, billions of people have been taken out of poverty. Most countries are developing over time, some with more difficulty than others, and policy really matters inside countries. And technology has cured so many ills and problems. I know the Gates Foundation is here. I think AI will be another round of technology which will probably cure some cancers, and that's kind of an amazing thing. And while sometimes technology is disruptive, it is also the thing that lifts up mankind over many years. So I'm optimistic about the technology. We have to navigate the complex geopolitics, but hopefully mankind will continue to grow, get healthier over time, and good policies and good medicine and good issues will circulate the world. And I'm hoping that America, plays a very healthy part. One of the reasons I'd like to be here is America should play a very healthy part in expanding into Africa, helping African nations, through diplomacy and business and foreign investment, education, all those things which can actually help countries do better.
Thank you. And it's interesting you mentioned technology. So over the last decade, you've seen the rise of neobanks, payment institutions, and the definition of banking, in a sense, has sort of changed in the last 10 years. I guess the question is, how do you see banking and finance industry evolving into the future in the face of disruption and emerging technology?
Yeah. Actually, after this, I'm having a lunch with a lot of the fintech companies here. Technology has been changing banking my whole life. And if you look at certain things we do, if you didn't have mainframes, you wouldn't have mutual funds. It wasn't possible to calculate things that quick, and so, but part of banking will, I always say, ask the first question, what will remain the same? Well, people are going to have to raise money, lend money, move money, hold money for themselves, for businesses. That will stay the same. And banks will play a critical role in that. How that happens will always change. So now you have some great fintech companies here, you have some great fintech companies around the world, but we've always been able to adapt, to use technology to do those things for our clients better, faster, cheaper, more efficiently, to use data to help the clients. It is really important to have a healthy financial system. I mean, a financial system is kind of the flywheel for the health of an economy. It allocates capital, it raises money, it gives entrepreneurs money to do things. So wherever I go around the world, where you have a healthy financial system, you usually have a healthy economy. If you don't have a healthy financial system, you usually don't have a healthy economy. So, and whether it's fintech, and I'm never worried about competition, or main banks, we're together. Very often we partner with what you and I would call fintech. But the goal is to do a better job for the client. That client could be an individual, a corporation, the government, the sovereign wealth fund, et cetera.
Right. No, thank you. But how can regulators and financial institutions balance innovation with risk management in this evolving technology space?
Okay, now you ruined my day by mentioning regulations. Regulators, obviously you want a healthy system, and if you don't, and the financial system collapses, it's obviously terrible for a country. So I think it's very reasonable that regulators are always trying to make safety and soundness. But some of the safety and soundness is very basic. A lot of regulations go way beyond that in terms of safety and soundness. And if you look at the United States, we have healthy banks, but the regulations have taken on social causes and a whole bunch of other things which may not work in favor of having a better system. So if I was a regulator, I would always be asking and talking to financial companies about it. What is it that works? What doesn't work? What stops you from banking people? I don't know the banking. I just got here, so I haven't had a chance to talk to a lot of people here and get caught up to date what's happening in your country. But in the United States, a lot of banking regulations have made people unbanked. And we have a hard time describing that to senators and congressmen and regulators. There's their regulations that drove people out of the banking system, and being in the banking system is a very healthy thing. So I know here like 40% of the people are unbanked. So a lot of the fintech people are trying to reach out to the unbanked. Getting them in the system is a good thing. It's much cheaper for them than being unbanked. It's safer for them. And then also, if we get them in our branches in the United States, we have branches in the United States, and we try to educate everyone about saving money, getting your kid to college, how do you buy a home, some very basic things, but people need to have that kind of financial education, a good job for them. We also do that for small businesses. How do you start a small business? How do you sign a lease? How do you negotiate a contract? So a lot of small business entrepreneurs can get a start. And so regulators should always be thinking, what is it they actually want the outcome to be? Very often it's just, rules and regulations are passed out of anger or simple, ideas, but they actually have the adverse consequence on what you actually want to accomplish.
Right. No, thank you. I guess if I come to Nigeria, JP Morgan has been operating in Nigeria since 1960. Fun fact, actually, we were involved in the setting up of Nigerian textile mills, which is the first major private U.S. business project in Nigeria back in 1960. We've operated a representative office in Nigeria since 1982. We had advised the federal government on a number of initiatives, including the setting up of the NSIA. So we see ourselves as partners in progress with Nigeria. But Jamie, my question is, how integral is Nigeria to the JP Morgan overall strategy, and what is the trajectory from here going forward?
Yeah, so obviously Nigeria is a very large country, probably I think one of the fastest growing populations in the world, and should have a very bright future. So one of the things when we go to countries, and so I inherited JP Morgan. I've been here, I've been running the company for a little over 20 years, but being around the world gives us huge knowledge. And that knowledge that we have around Nigeria, so on the way over here, I was reading our research. That research, we educate the world about Nigeria. We educate central banks about Nigeria. We help educate the IMF about Nigeria. And so being here is a very important thing. And what we want to do is be open in more countries in Europe, in Africa, so that over time, the next generation has a footprint here. And when you're here, you actually have much more local knowledge. So you're in Lagos, you know much more about what's going on in Nigeria than I could know sitting in New York City. And we're quite optimistic about the future of Africa. I really do wish that America helped get our companies over here to help Africa, to help grow and expand and bring capital, ideas, technology, et cetera. And that's kind of why we're here. And then we rely on local town, .ou, to help your country.
No, thank you. Banks in Nigeria have been accused, or sometimes been accused, of making supernormal profits against the background of a weak macro. I think this is not particularly dissimilar, tug of war between Wall Street and Main Street. So I guess my question is, how do you balance superlative performance and well-being of the general populace?
Yeah. So, obviously, if you're not financially healthy, you will fail. So this notion that somehow you are balancing, I don't balance at all. We are going to be a healthy, vibrant bank. The reason we're being a healthy, vibrant bank is so we can serve our customers. And
the bankers are clapping.
Yeah. Well, no, I think we need to do a better job educating the world about the role of a financial system. I don't even know what they mean when they say Wall Street. We bank 80 million Americans. We bank 100 countries. We bank cities, schools, states, hospitals. We bank 12,000 corporations around the world. We bank sovereign wealth funds. We in the United States, we have branches in low-income neighborhoods. We have special products and services. We reach out to all different communities, which we're unabashed about, including in the United States, the Black community, the Hispanic community, et cetera. And so that's what we do. And we have to be healthy and vibrant. And our profits kind of go up or down based upon a lot of different things. There are a lot of businesses where I tell people profits aren't based on what you did this quarter. They're based on what you've been doing over years. We've been here for 60 years, and that's how you earn your respect, earn your trust. And I don't worry as much about short-term fluctuations in profits. But again, and so when they say Wall Street, is that the investor? A lot of veterans own our stock. We think 100 million Americans own our stock. And we're just a piece of the flywheel that lends money to companies, gets entrepreneurs, takes people public. And, like all things, people make mistakes, and we make mistakes, but we try to bank all citizens in all countries. And I would hope wherever we are that we're respected for helping that country and those people. And so I think that's true for all things, like even in business, we have to educate the world. Jobs, capital and jobs are good for countries. Investing is good for a country. All jobs are good. That first job is a dignity job. And when I go around the world, when we get kids jobs, that gives them dignity. It gives them income. That first job is the first rung in the ladder. They often get promoted and they can form families and buy homes. And so it's just important we get it right. And very often people do things that they think are in the interest of the people, and they destroy countries and companies. And so we have to be very careful how we educate the world about the role of business. I think if business mistreats customers, they should be punished. If business is bad, they should be punished. If business is doing things that don't make it, that could be any business, but that's not the same thing as just people just angry at companies. Free market, free enterprise, since I've been in business, has never been unregulated. We have a heavily, properly regulated free enterprise system, which helps lift people out of poverty. So 2 billion people lifted out of poverty in the last 20 or 30 years. That's extraordinary. However, if you look at the bottom 20% of America, their incomes didn't go up for 20 years. So I understand their frustration. They're right. It's not because JP Morgan did well or not. It's because of our own policies around education, regulation, permitting, healthcare. And so, governments have to say, what's the problem and how do you fix it? and they're always looking for a scapegoat, and I think that is a huge mistake. And and I've made a list of countries. I know you had a speech here earlier from someone from the World Bank. You can make a list of those things that help countries grow: skills, universities, jobs, foreign investment, domestic investment. Making it easy for entrepreneurs to start companies, proper permitting, regulations that don't inhibit companies from growing and things like that. And you can have very healthy countries, and that's what we should all be striving for. And instead of yelling at each other, figure out those policies that work. And often they're not the ones that governments undertake, including in the United States, by the way.
Thank you. So we have a lot of business leaders in the room, including some of us that work for you. And we benefit from your advice quite regularly. But could you please share with the audience some of your thoughts on what makes a great leader and how African businesses can apply them?
I mean, so was it with you, how African business can apply what?
Your thoughts on leadership.
Oh, leadership, yeah. I think leadership, I'm going to divide it into three parts. It's not really divisible, but one is, and I've been in tons of companies that don't get this part right. Analytics, facts, detail, analysis, repeat, rinse, facts, detail, and honest assessment of yourself, what you do well, what you don't do well, what the competition is doing, and constantly doing that. So at JP Morgan, while we've been very successful, we also look at all the mistakes we made, lessons learned from mistakes we made. How come other companies ate our lunch in this country or that product or that services? Even in areas where we're number one in the world, we're not number one in Africa. We may not be number one in every country in Asia. We may be number 8 in somewhere in Europe. And there are reasons for that. It could be the quality of your people. It could be your technology. It could be, so we're quite critical and analytical of ourselves. And that's essentially you do. And your people have to do it, and they have to be very honest about it. A lot of companies I go to, they don't have those honest assessments. The people are busy telling the boss what the boss wants to hear. And as a corollary to that, it's very important that we all get out, that we all listen to each other. So when I get around and I go to Africa or Europe or even cities around America, I learned a tremendous amount about my own company, my own clients. I can go to any branch, sit down with any teller, and they'll teach me something I don't know about JP Morgan, including something we're doing which is really stupid. And so that's one thing. The second is, I'm going to call it administration, but you got to run it well. You have to be very thoughtful. Do people get things done? So you could be the great analysis, but very often people are a hot mess when it comes to running things. They're not organized. They don't show up on time. They don't have follow-up lists. They don't tell people. They don't delegate properly. And you've seen this, and I've seen it everywhere, where companies, they may be really smart, but they're unable to manage themselves out of a paper bag. But the third is, I think, the most important, for real leadership, is that you earn people's trust and respect. You do not earn people's trust and respect if you are always blaming them, or if you're taking credit for everything. You need people to work who want to work with you because you earn their respect. I've seen a lot of bosses that people don't want to work for. Well, how are you going to build a great company if that's the case? That's true in the military. It's true in government, it's true in business, and to earn people's trust and respect, I think is something they don't talk about a lot in business. It's about your heart. Do you care? People know if you really care or not. It's about your curiosity. Are you always learning, or is it always that the boss thinks he knows the answer to everything? And those things create trust and respect so that the team around the table speaks up. They contribute. They want to do their share. They're part of that team, because at the end of the day, it's that team that's going to get the stuff done.